In this session, Kyle's going to drill down into 2 ways to become more profitable.
Welcome to the weekly NeoMarketing podcast, featuring one half of the Golden Group C-Suite, Kyle Golding, and Pritch Pritchard, APR, PRSA Fellow.
Kyle, you've talked often about there being 2 ways to increase your profitability, marketing, and efficiency. Tell us more.
That's right. Everyone wants to talk about marketing. Everyone wants to drive more traffic, more sales, which is great. I love more sales too. I love traffic too. But sometimes that more people, more sales, everybody has to know, everybody has to love us approach is inefficient in your marketing for a couple of reasons. The other aspect, the second piece of it, is what it costs for you to do that bit of business. Internal efficiencies are a great way for you to find profitability. That's where usually you need a third party, someone like us, to come in and examine things because you're too close to it. There's a whole lot of how we've always done it that ends up costing you money. Or sometimes you just don't want to hurt people's feelings. There's political, office politics and things like that. So first is obvious, driving more traffic. Doing a great job with your marketing communications, your external connecting to your audience drives traffic to your product or service, and you have the potential for a sale and then a resell. There's new audience and captured audience, right? And of course, as anyone knows, a captured audience is a whole lot more cost effective than new audience.
Right. And to that point, you're really talking about not a shotgun approach, which a lot of people do, but a very targeted approach.
Laser focused approach.
There we go.
So the days of mass marketing by running an ad in the newspaper and running a TV spot on your local news and running spots on your local radio station when there are only 3 channels on the networks, those days are gone. So mass marketing still happens for products that are that big. Apple, Coca-Cola, Budweiser, those guys can do mass marketing all over the place because they have a huge audience. But there's much more likely that anyone listening to this podcast right now is running a small to medium-sized business, and that could be literally $10 or $20 million a year in sales and still considered a small to medium-sized business. So don't think I'm talking about a mom and pop, $1,000 a year type business. I'm talking about a $10 million a year business that's considered a small business. And in this country, that's the bulk of where commerce comes from. So if you have a small business like that, small to medium business, you have to be highly focused on who you're trying to attract. Not everybody, but the audience most likely to make the purchase to buy your product or service. That's all that matters. Anyone who's not capable or isn't willing or simply doesn't connect with you, you don't have any reason spending time, effort, and budget on marketing to.
Right.
Because you're going to lose the battle head-to-head with your competitors if they like how they do it, they connect with them better. Or simply, you can tell people about Mercedes and Rolex and other high-end products all day long, and if they can't afford them, they can't buy them. So you have to connect the right message, the right audience, the right channel at the right time, and then not worry about everyone else who didn't see your message, who wasn't capable or willing to make a purchase anyways.
You got to kind of keep your peripheral vision on them, though, because things could change and they could become part of your market.
Absolutely.
Is that right?
And that's how new audiences develop. So you have a core, you have your center. If you're on a scale of 1 to 10, number 5 is the middle, and that middle is that person or business entity that's most likely to say, this is who we want to engage with, whether they're buying a product or a service. From there, you don't go to 2 and try to develop audience. You go to 4.5 and 5.5. And incrementally spread from the center, from your core. Too many times people go, hey, we got these guys locked up right here. Let's go over here and do something completely different to expand our audience. Now you got to expand from the core out. So that's issue number 1. Is how you develop new audience and keeping your eye on those people. But at some point in that spectrum, and it depends again on what your product or service is and how specific it is. Obviously, B2B is much more specific than B2C, and even B2C is going to be economics, if it's a need or a luxury, discretional income, all that kind of stuff. Seasonal, there's all kinds of factors that go into it. But start at your core, slightly expand out, and not try to go too fast, too broad, too wide. And get into scenarios where you're just talking to people who never will care about what you're telling them.
Sometimes they just do stay on the peripheral.
Right.
Yeah.
Once you understand that and you're really doing a good job bringing the right audience and doing business with them on a regular basis, the other way to make it more profitable now that your traffic is up is to decrease the cost of doing business. Number one, if your marketing is highly focused, you decrease that cost because you're not shotgunning out stuff that doesn't work and you're spending money on anyway. So that's number one. Number two is just internal processes. A lot of people that are on, the lean manufacturing and some of the lean startups, some of the people that fall into these things, and they're pretty strict guidelines. I'm not saying you shouldn't do it, but I'm also saying you should be thoughtful in those things. Right. And it's usually a hybrid that works best in my experience from lean and other techniques. Everything you do in your process, from answering the phone, opening the front door, the clients come in, the customer shows up, stocking the shelves, etc., is called a touch or an action. And every action, every touch costs you money. And it's not something you write a check for, but you can pay an employee, you have the electricity on, there's something that happens. Right. You had to buy a piece of equipment to do it.
Right.
There's something that makes that touch or that action possible, and that has to be paid for in your cost model. The less actions and the less touches, the less cost, so you can bring those things down. Sometimes people just have employees that no one can explain what it is they actually do, and that salary is a cost that you don't really need. And if you're going to be serious about efficiency, sometimes you have to let those people go. Sometimes you have to upgrade equipment or take old equipment out and put new equipment in that's more efficient. Sometimes you have to not do things you want to do.
Right.
I find CEOs all the time that want to have a pet project they think is going to be the next $1 million item, and everyone else in the organization thinks it's never going to sell. You can't cost or no one needs it. That it's a better mousetrap no one asked for. And so all that cost in R&D and development and even marketing, if you want to take it to market when it fails, you have to absorb somehow.
Scariest 4 words in public relations and marketing from your CEO. I've got a great idea.
Oh, yes. It's always like, oh, crap, here we go. How do we balance telling CEO no and keeping our jobs at the same time?
Right.
And luckily, once you've been around the block a few times, it gets easier. That first time I telling CEO no is very scary.
It is, but you have to have the guts to do it.
But it's even things like, your relationships with your outside vendors, your third parties, how much you're paying in taxes, how you structure people's salaries, benefits. There's so many things that go into raw materials purchases, bulk purchasing. There's so many things that a business should look at and say, is this the most efficient, effective way of doing this? And usually it is. Usually you're right on, and it's a great way of doing it. Sometimes it's your only option, especially if you're buying something specific, raw material or something like that, or you employ someone who's extremely specific in their skill set. You have to pay them what they're worth. Right. That's perfectly fine. I'm not saying about cut corners, doing things cheap, but I'm doing things smart. And examining everything. Any organization who's not willing to examine their processes from head to toe is just fooling themselves. And at the end of the day, it's typically ego that's telling them, like, we're doing a great job. Don't mess with it. It's not broken. Don't mess with it.
Ain't broke. Don't fix it.
Right. You need to be examining these things at all times. So much like your marketing, you should always be measuring and examining how effective it is and what tiny, small moves, not major pivots, but small moves you can make to make it more effective and efficient. Have that same thought process for your internal processes for how you touch and have the actions you have, getting a product, service, etc., from the front door to the back door and out and into a sale, even processing the sale,
right?
How you pay commissions, how you pay taxes. Everything should be examined and measured on a regular basis. And then when something stands out as the place where we're losing money, that's the thing you should attack first.
And this is really kind of where dashboards come in handy too, aren't they?
Absolutely. It allows you to put it all in front of you, keep it in front of you, and visualize it. Some people are really good with visualization. Some people need to write things down. Some people need to talk about it or hear it.
Different kinds of learners.
Absolutely. So again, there's no set way to do this. The advice I'm trying to give everyone is do it. Make the examination, look at everything you're doing, and have an open mind to the idea that you could make some changes along the way. If you're constantly and continually doing that, fine-tuning your marketing and streamlining your internal processes, your profitability can go way up. Everyone thinks profitability begins with traffic and with more sales, but sometimes it just comes from taking less money to do what you do.
Right.
Increases profitability, increases margin, and sometimes that's easier because you can control that. Where your marketing, you can control the attempt you make, but how the audience reacts to it, you can't exactly control.
Right. Now, there was a session at the PRSA International Conference. I didn't get to go because I was headed back here. But it was creativity in public relations, and I know this is something that you like to talk about. Give us your thoughts. What is the place of creativity in business?
That's a great question, Pritch. I love that question. Started off in the music industry, transitioned into advertising as a graphic designer, and got into the marketing side, and now on the development side, just the natural progression of the way my brain works. But I always go back to creativity, to problem solving. At the end of the day, a huge chunk of business is problem solving. And this term is tired, but it drives the point home. Thinking outside the box. Mm-hmm. And if you look at the top businesses in the United States and the world in 2017, they didn't exist 5 and 10 years ago. There was no Uber. There was no Facebook. These things did not exist 10 years ago. So you can't have the same thought process that you had in 1990, and 1980, and 1950, and 1920. You have to adapt and move with the times, and that takes creativity. It takes vision to say, we've always done things this way, and industries have always existed in a certain way, but they're going to change. They're moving here, and we'll get left behind if we don't make that move.
Right.
Being able to see what that next move is pure creativity.
And creativity, in a sense, is a willingness to listen to other ideas within your organization.
Open-mindedness is definitely a trait of creativity.
I'm taking some students to Chicago here in a few weeks to visit agencies, and we had some difficulties in our planning, and I came up with 3 options and laid them out to the planners, and they came up with 2 more options, and the option that we ended up with was one that somebody else thought of. So if we hadn't been open to listening to those things, we would have missed that.
Too many people think that creativity is just pure creativity for like art for art's sake. The difference between art and graphic design, right, is graphic design has a function, and art is for pure beauty and for symbolism. It's to simply convey an emotion, where graphic design has to actually function, has to create an action that the intended use was created it for. So too many people think of creativity as art.
As the art.
And art is wonderful, but in business, think of creativity the way a graphic designer approaches it, which is taking ideas, concepts, ways of communicating, but having a business decision, a business effort behind it that you're wanting to happen.
Perfect. Thanks very much, Kyle, for sharing that with us.
Absolutely. As always, I appreciate having these conversations with you, Pritch.
We look forward to more as we keep doing this NeoMarketing thing, podcast, and we hope you'll continue to join us. And we're also looking for folks who might like to ask us questions on air, and perhaps come guest podcast with us sometime. So let us know.
That's right. We'll keep it creative, add some guests, and
go.
Keep answering your questions each and every week. Till next time, see you later. Good luck.
Ciao.